Well, hello everybody and welcome to kind of a special video. I wasn't planning on doing this, but as someone that has dealt with anxiety and depression, I thought I'd put my thoughts together on the topic and tell you how I've dealt and kind of how I treaded through those dark waters, those dark times that many of us have faced in different flavors or ways. So if you're someone who has faced similar issues, stay on. Perhaps some of this can help you. Who knows? If you haven't, then maybe click away because shit's about to get kind of dark here, because I have to tell you a little bit of my context, my background, so that you can understand where I'm coming from and perhaps why I've decided to do certain things. So, I'm someone who has a mild walking difficulty. I walk with a walking stick, think Dr. House kind of deal. And this is something that started essentially about 6 years ago. And kind of has gotten a little bit worse over time. It's possible that it won't actually get worse from this point onwards, but it's also possible that it will. And that aspect of it is almost like the most terrifying thing, because not knowing is, you know, almost worse than kind of bracing yourself for what's to come, for sure. But again, in my case, it's entirely possible that I'll be able to maintain my current condition, which is, you know, it's operational. I have a full-time job as a software engineer. I'm a functional person in all intents and purposes, and I do lots of stretches and so on to do the best that I can to stay that way. But anyways, it hasn't always been a bag of sunshine and rainbows for me, and I went through some real dark times. And for a while, like we're talking maybe for an entire year, even like getting up in the morning to go to work felt like a completely just brutal challenge, just overwhelming. And if you've ever faced kind of depression or anxiety, anything along those lines, you know how difficult it can be, and someone from the outside will probably find it very silly. But, you know, again, if you've been there, you probably sympathize and understand. So, in this video, I just wanted to talk about a couple of things that I did that really kind of got me through that, and not only that, but has gotten me into just an amazing mental state that I've never had, you know, even prior to these issues. So one of the things was meditation, and the problem with meditation is that the moment you throw out that word, people think of the Buddhist monk, you know, similar to me, kind of shaved head, and just no possessions, no clothes, just kind of meditating the entire day with like Buddhist music happening in the background and all kinds of religious notions being thrown around. But in reality, the essence of it is focusing on something to an extreme extent, to the point that kind of you lose track of the rest, right? So think of it. I'm sure at some point in your life you've been so engrossed in something you were doing. Maybe you were playing music, maybe you were with someone you really liked, doing something you really liked. At that point, you lost track of time, right? You didn't notice whether or not you have something uncomfortable in your body. Maybe if you have like back pain, you wouldn't have noticed that shit because you're in the moment, right? And this is really topical. I know this is very kind of how to say it, like stereotypical, and I don't really want to come across as preachy, I'm just trying to explain the essence of the exercise of meditation. And that is, again, just to be so incredibly focused on something that you're not necessarily as aware of something like pain or, you know, different emotions, negative emotions generally, right? So what happens when you're not in that state a lot of the times is that we start thinking without knowing or realizing that we're thinking about stuff. So I'll give you an example, right? Let's say you're in a traffic jam and you get really mad because you're in a traffic jam. You kind of get into this mindset of, you know, being pissed about that. You start thinking about things that pissed you off perhaps during the day, and the act of thinking back and forth reproduces the emotion that you felt when you went through that situation, and you're essentially repeating and recreating that feeling, emotion, or experience in your mind over and over, right? And this is just what some people call being lost in thought. You might not even realize, but you're kind of jumping from one thought to the next, and all of them, you know, might follow this trend of leading you to kind of recreate these negative emotions. If you're in a mind state of being present, something like I said, maybe you're playing a music concert, you know, maybe you're just kind of playing a video game you really like. In that moment, all of those kind of negative emotions or sensations, it's very kind of enlightening to notice that they go away quite quickly. So in a moment like that, it's very hard to stay angry, for example, for more than, you know, a minute or 2 minutes. And the essence of meditation is that it helps you not stay in those kind of negative states for a very prolonged period of time, because you're not lost in thought, because you're present in the moment. You experience that emotion, you experience the anger, frustration, whatever it is, wherever it is you're going through, right? You experience that quite intensely, as everybody does, for a minute, for 2 minutes, and then it kind of goes away. It just runs by, because you're not holding on to it by reproducing that thought pattern that leads to that emotion. So the idea, again, just to kind of bring it full circle here, is that by focusing a lot onto something, in this case with meditation, we focus on the breath, right? And there are plenty of free apps that you can use for meditation, so I recommend you try it out. Perhaps it will help you. It did help me. The act of focusing on the breath, just kind of taking 15 minutes in your morning and focusing on the breath to the exclusion of all else, really shows you that unless you're lost in thought and reproducing these negative emotions and feelings, the brevity of these emotions is actually, you know, the length, the duration of these emotions is very short. So again, you might stay angry like 1 minute or 2 minutes, as opposed to staying angry for 10 minutes or maybe 1 hour, as many of us do or did, right? And the difference in your life that makes, just think about it. Think about all the bad shit or mistakes you can make while you're operating in a state of anger or frustration or any kind of negative emotion like that. When you're holding on to that mindset for such a prolonged period of time, all kinds of bad stuff are gonna produce themselves as outcomes, right? So really the key there is, again, just kind of being present to the point that these emotions come and go. So everybody has these emotions, right? It's not that I've suddenly become enlightened and I don't get mad, I don't get pissed or frustrated. Absolutely I do. But what I try to do is kind of notice that emotion and say, oh yeah, I'm real pissed about this, right? You kind of recognize that, notice it, and then it goes by. Just let it roll by. Don't hold on to that shit. Right? So to me, meditating 15 minutes every morning absolutely was a game changer. I'm not saying it will work for everybody, you know, and one of the things is it takes a lot of time to actually get to a point where the meditation is fruitful. A lot of it in the beginning is just realizing how lost in thought you constantly are, because you are to the point that you don't even notice in the beginning. And this is the case for largely the majority of people. I'll be surprised if, you know, you're enlightened to the point that this is not the case for you. So I recommend you check that out. There are plenty of kind of books, apps that can help you with this. You can even search on YouTube meditation and just do like a 15-minute meditation and try it out. See if you feel better. Compare how you feel after the meditation. See if it helps. And again, this is something that helps in the long term. So it didn't magically make things go away for me. But after like a month of doing this every day, I felt incredibly better and just very robust to changes in my emotional state and things like that. Again, not holding on to bad shit for prolonged periods of time. That for me was an incredibly powerful and life-changing realization. So I'll leave you with that. I hope that helps you in some capacity. I know these things are a little bit tough to talk about, and I just hope that it was kind of helpful to you if you suffered from these problems as I have in the past. So that will be it for me today. Let me know down below if you have any thoughts on it, and as always, thanks for watching. Catch you next time.